Just a reminder, the CGR Daily Update, sponsored by Gas Station Fountain Drinks. I couldn't get through the day without them. I don't drink coffee, but I drink about 4 of these a day, which is probably worse. Probably going to kill me. What can you do? Hey, welcome to the Daily Update. I'm Jeremy. Thank you for joining. Just a programming note. We are going to record our next podcast tonight. We've been doing them live streams as we record. We're going to try something different this time. We're not going to do we're not going to record the next podcast live. I got to be honest, we've got some audio issues with this StreamYard app, which I use, which I like to use it in this context because I can go out to multiple platforms at once, which is great, but the audio is just not good. If anyone from StreamYard's listening, audio is not good when I have a guest on, and so it's just not good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to record the podcast tonight, and then we'll post it tomorrow. And just a little sneak peek, hopefully not a spoiler. We're going to be talking about Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick will be the topic of our next podcast. So if you're a Cheap Trick fan, make sure you tune in tomorrow when we post that podcast. Let's get to the news and comments. Sammy Hagar is back in the news. By the way, guys, Sammy Hagar was on the Howard Stern show either yesterday or the day before, and they've posted all kinds of cool video clips of them performing various Van Halen songs. I think it was the day before yesterday we mentioned that Sammy is doing a tour very heavy on the Van Halen stuff. He's calling it the Best of All Worlds, which will start in March. He'll be having Joe Satriani along instead of his normal guitarist, the awesome Vic Johnson. I guess where they're focusing on Van Halen, he wanted to have Joe instead of Vic. It'd be cool if I bet Vic's there too. I just bet Vic is going to be there somewhere. I don't know. I mean, Vic's been the dude for a long time. But anyways, this is related to that appearance on Howard Stern and also this Best of All Worlds tour, which will go deep into the Van Halen material. Sammy has extended an invitation to Alex Van Halen and David Lee Roth to join him on that tour. Quote, "It's time. Nobody else is going to do it," Hagar declared to Howard Stern. If Dave goes out, he can't sing my stuff, but we can do a few of the early Van Halen songs. I have no problem with that. I did it when I was in Van Halen. This is really a celebration of all that, and we are the only ones who can do it. So he's going out. He's taking Michael Anthony, of course, will be there. Satriani will be there. Drummer Jason Bonham will be there. We're going to invite every musician in every town. First of all, whenever you play, if there's a guitar player in town, no matter what city it is, they come out to see Joe, just like they used to for Eddie. So if we've got other guitar players, we'll get them involved. Other singers, get them involved. If Alex Van Halen wants to jump up, if David Lee Roth wants to come out and join us, come on, MFer, you're welcome. This is about Van Halen. So he's made the invitation. I don't think it will amount to anything. I don't think you'll see Dave. I don't know. Dave might show up. He would maybe show up for a gig and sing a few tunes. I don't know. But it is true. Sammy can sing Dave's stuff. Dave cannot sing Sammy's stuff. In a new interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Kiss bassist vocalist Gene Simmons insisted that the band's final show on the End of the Road tour, scheduled for December 2nd at Madison Square Garden in New York City, will be the group's last. Quote, "My hand on the Bible, and I should know because my people wrote that book. In fact, my people also wrote the follow-up book, the New Testament. And so I'll say right here, right now, my hand on the Bible, it will be the final Kiss in makeup appearance." Okay, so there's so many things to take out of that. Does that mean there'll be an appearance where they're not in makeup? You know my theory, and I still stick to it. Kiss will continue as a touring entity without Gene and Paul. Okay, there will continue to be some type of Kiss show touring the nation for years to come. It just won't feature Gene and Paul. They'll, of course, own it and will be making money from it. That's what's going to happen. But Gene says, nope, that's the last show. Regarding Kiss's reasons for hanging it up, Simmons says it has nothing to do with ticket sales or anything. It has to do with Mother Nature. And at a certain point, you have to understand that it's going to be a point of diminishing returns because of the kind of band we are. I wear 7-inch platform dragon boots. Each weighs as much as a light bowling ball. Armor, studs, leather, all that stuff. And that weighs about 40 pounds in total. And I got to spit fire and fly through the air and all that. And you got to do it for 2 hours. He's 74 years old. So it's basically saying, I don't want to do that anymore. Asked if he gets emotional about this, quote, he says, quote, when I was a kid going to school, my nickname was Mr. Spock. He said, I've never been much for emotion and stuff like that. I remember my Uncle George, who I loved dearly. I remember standing over his grave and being sad, but I didn't cry. Tears don't come easy for me. But the few times they have is when I look out at the audience and I see a 50-plus-year-old fan who's been with us ever since he was a kid, wearing Kiss makeup. And next to him is his late 20s, early 30s-year-old son wearing makeup. And sitting on the shoulder of his son is his grandson, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever, wearing our makeup. And that little kid putting up my hand gesture with the 2 horns and the thumb out, which actually in sign language means I love you, and sticking his tongue out for the first time. Well, that gets me going every time. And who wouldn't get emotional by that? Legendary rock guitarist Steve Hackett. He was in Genesis. Remember Genesis? Wind and Wuthering is my favorite Genesis album, by the way. Love that album. Steve Hackett, he was also in GTR. He had one album with one good song on it. 86. Steve Hackett will release his new studio album, The Circus and the Night Whale, on February 16th, 2024 via Inside Out Music, a rite of passage concept album with a young character called Travla at the center of it. The Circus and the Night Whale is 13 tracks, has an autobiographical angle for the musician who says about his 30th solo release, quote, I love this album. It says the things I've been wanting to say for a very long time. I hope Steve stands up now when he plays. Drives me crazy when you see old footage of Genesis and Steve Hackett sits down. Robert Fripp sitting down. Dude, come on. Rock and roll is visual. If you're going to sit, I mean, I understand it if you have health issues and you can't, right? Frampton's doing a tour. He has to sit. I get that. But when you're 24 years old in Genesis, you can't stand up. Robert Fripp, you can't stand up. You got to sit behind your tape deck on your butt. I have never, I'm sure they exist, but I don't think there's anyone that's ever not fallen asleep at a King Crimson concert. I'm just saying. The Circus and the Night Whale is the first new music in over 2 years from Hackett since his acoustic LP Under a Mediterranean Sky from January 2021. So keep your eyes open for the Circus and the Night Whale. Steve Hackett, whether he sits or not, he's a really good guitarist. Robert Fripp is too. Just stand up, guys. Come on, stand up. That made the King Crimson people. Seriously, go try and watch a King Crimson concert. It's like everyone's sitting down. Fripp literally has a big reel-to-reel player like he sits behind. It's like, dude, no wonder they weren't successful on MTV. In a new interview with Canada's Link Text, sorry, that's not correct. That's a little thing, and never mind. In a new interview with Canada's The Metal Voice, George Lynch was asked if package tours featuring Dokken and Lynch Mob are a thing of the past. He responded, quote, it sounds like it's kind of run its course. Yeah, I think so. So that's fine. It was a thing I'd been pushing to do for many, many years, and I'd been proposing the idea to different agents that I've had over the decades, and I never found anyone to pick up the ball and run with it until I started working with my present agency, which also represents Dokken. And Don and I are on relatively good terms. We're fine. And so it worked. And he agreed to it. And we went out. Well, so they've done a few shows, Lynch Mob and Dokken together. He says, I always thought that the competitive kind of thing, the story, the backstory, the people, if they're aware of it, would spur some interest. And it worked. And I think that's healthy. That's entertainment. And in fact, what is cool when you see that package tour is they'd bring George out towards the end of the Dokken set and he'd actually play with Don. And that's kind of cool. But it sounds like both George and Don have kind of buried the hatchet. And you see this, which is a good thing. It's part of the circle of life, right? It's, you get older, you don't worry about the things that used to bug you when you were younger. And it's, and everyone generally has this opinion that, hey, you're only going to live so long. Let's not waste the time we have left fighting, which is a good thing. I think that's great. And so anyways, it doesn't look like that they'll be, Lynch Mob and Dokken will be doing the package tours anymore. George Lynch, just a great player. But the guy in Dokken, this John Levin, whatever the guy's name is, he's really good too. The new Dokken album, music is killer. I've said that before. I'm a Dokken fan, George Lynch fan. Check it out. But you won't be able to see the Lynch Mob and Dokken together again. All right. Let's talk about an album. Who can I offend with what I'm about to say? I'm going to say, hey, Charlie S., thank you for tuning in. For my money, the most underrated band of the classic rock era is UFO. UFO should be on par with the big classic rock bands you think of, but they're not. It's not because they weren't talented, because they were one of the best bands ever, and particularly the British bands, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden. They were all tremendously influenced by UFO. And Michael Schenker. I mean, KK Downing. I think he stole everything from Michael Schenker. I'm just saying. Okay. Long blonde hair, flying V's, whatever. What am I getting to? This is an awesome album. UFO's Obsession from 1977. It was the Obsession tour that was recorded to make the greatest live album ever, Strangers in the Night, came from the Obsession tour. Well, this is the Obsession album. There's a few things going on. First of all, it's one of these weird album covers by Hipgnosis, which makes no sense at all, but that's what Hipgnosis did, right? So you got everyone in the band with their eyes, nostrils, and mouths full of ball bearings. I don't know what that means. But Schenker says, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. I don't want ball bearings in my mouth. I don't want that. So here's Michael, the only normal looking dude on the album cover. But anyways, and I could have picked other UFO albums. Is this my favorite UFO album, studio album? Today, probably. But tomorrow, I might tell you a different one. But this is a great album. If you've never listened to Obsession, you got to listen to it. But even more important, you got to listen to Strangers in the Night, and you got to check out their back catalog, because UFO, the most underrated classic rock band of the classic rock era. And I'll die on that hill. Speaking of underrated bands, did I mention at the top that our next podcast episode will be about the mighty Cheap Trick? You know how many albums Cheap Trick has? You know, Cheap Trick has never stopped putting out albums and touring. They've never stopped. They still, every couple of years, put out an album, and they're still good. And they are one of the great American rock and roll bands. And I'll die on that hill. And we're going to talk about it on the next episode of the podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the CGR Daily Update. We'll see you tomorrow for another update. And remember, we'll be launching the new podcast episode about Cheap Trick tomorrow as well. Take care. Live long and prosper.